Evening, everyone. I'm Julie Moore, the Secretary of Natural Resources. It is 4 o'clock, but I think we'll wait just another two in case there are any arrivals. Then we can start with a round of introductions. All right. I'm going to suggest we go ahead and get started. Thank you. Is my voice still quiet, Doug? Thanks for flagging that. See if I can untwist my microphone. Is that any better? Yeah. Okay. Thank you all for joining us this evening. I'm Julie Moore. I'm the Secretary of Natural Resources, and I will, for the sake of expediency, just sort of call out folks from my team that are on the call tonight and ask them just to wave at all of you so you can get a sense. A number of them will be speaking as we move through our presentation. First, Charles Martin, who's the Deputy Secretary here at ANR. Jason Batchelder, who's the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, and Deputy DEC Commissioner Heather Pembroke. Also joining them is Neil Kamen, who heads up our Water Investment Division in DEC. Also joining us tonight is Danielle Fitzko, who is the Commissioner of the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, and then Andrea Shortsleeve, who is the Acting Commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Emma Ramirez Richer, who is probably the one you received the invitation to tonight from, is my assistant here in the secretary's office and can help connect you with resources within the agency if and as questions arise. So we do have a short presentation. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and then we will have time at the end for questions as well. I realize, Emma, can you tell me, is Steve Gomez on? He would have been the other one to introduce, and he's not on my screen here, I don't think, but in case I missed him.
I don't think I saw him,
Okay,
but if he
fair
comes
enough.
in, we can.
But let us know. So this is just a high-level introduction to the Agency of Natural Resources. Hopefully everyone can see my screen. Talk a little bit about what it is we do, a little bit about the magnitude of the resources the state of Vermont invests through ANR each year, and then the work of each of the three departments. So the mission of the Agency of Natural Resources really is consistent with our name. We're charged with the oversight and management of Vermont's natural environment on behalf of the people of Vermont. We have a really deep website that you're welcome to rummage around on with information that ranges from fairly high level to specific and should be able to answer most questions you have. That said, it can be a bit of an encyclopedia. So again, if you have trouble locating a particular piece of information you're looking for, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask. The way the agency here is structured is in three departments. We have a relatively small secretary's office that's comprised of about 30 staff. So it's sort of the team that supports me directly, along with our Office of Policy and Planning, as well as our legal services team that provides legal support to each of the agency's departments. And the three departments that comprise ANR are the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation, the Department of Environmental Conservation, and the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Somewhat recent additions to the Secretary's office include the advent of a Climate Action Office, which happened back in 2020 and 2021 following the passage of the Global Warming Solutions Act, and the creation of an Environmental Justice and Civil Rights Unit in 2022 following passage of Act 154, which is Vermont's civil rights bill. So you've met most of the folks shown on the screen here this evening. In addition to those present, our general counsel is Catherine Gessing. Our director of policy and planning is Billy Coster, and he also oversees, in addition to our participation in projects going through Act 250 or Section 248 review, Billy oversees the work of our Climate Action Office. We have a chief operating officer here at ANR, Kim Greenwood, who focuses on our internal operations. Our director of finance, Steve Gomez, who some of you will have the opportunity to meet as our budget moves through the legislature, and then our communications director, Stephanie Bracken. So I picked out just a few highlights from the work of the agency over the last year. Just to keep in mind, there are 650 or so full-time employees here at ANR. We swelled to a staff of more than 1,000 during the summer, primarily when we staff up to operate Vermont's 55 state parks. We have an annual budget that's north of $300 million and a lot of different activities that we are engaged in that I think of as forming the heart of Vermont. So picking the operational highlights from my perspective is a little bit hard. It's an incredible body of work, but would point to the creation of the Climate Action Office that is really intended to be the hub of state-led climate initiatives. We are in the throes of updating Vermont's climate action plan as required by the Global Warming Solutions Act. Vermont adopted an initial action plan in 2021, and this is the first comprehensive update that is due by July 1st of 2025. We are also in the process of working with the Treasurer's Office to draft a resilience implementation strategy. This again is looking at state-led initiatives that help improve Vermont's resilience in the face of climate change, and looking at both places we might be able to modify existing programs to have more impact on resilience, as well as where there may be gaps and how we could set about filling them. We have established a civil rights and environmental justice unit that's working to implement the state's environmental justice policy. ANR has been the recipient of considerable amount of federal funds over the last several years, particularly under ARPA, the American Rescue Plan Act, and what we sometimes refer to as bill funding or bipartisan infrastructure law funding. Between the two of them, during this 5-year period we currently sit in, the agency is slated to receive and administer, and by administer, I largely mean pass back out to Vermonters in the form of grants and contracts, more than $600 million in federal funds. It's just an incredible once in a lifetime amount of funding that we have been given the opportunity to help steward. We're also supporting implementation of Act 59, which was passed by the legislature in 2023. And this bill establishes statewide conservation goals of conserving 30% of the Vermont landscape by 2030 and 50% by 2050. That work is being done in close partnership with the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board. And will result in a statewide conservation plan to be delivered to the General Assembly by the end of next calendar year. In terms of the areas of emphasis for the agency, certainly top of the pile there is administering those federal funds. $600 million is a really significant undertaking, and we see are supporting investments in a lot of different areas, including drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater infrastructure, cleaning up contaminated sites, climate action, and looking at the health of our forests and forestry, and increasing wildland fire risk. We continue to pursue strategic land conservation opportunities. We're working to restore impaired rivers, streams, and lakes and protect our high quality waters. This includes a long-term commitment to water quality in Lake Champlain and Lake Memphremagog in particular, but also smaller bodies of water across the state. The outdoor recreation economy, and I think Commissioner Fitzko will speak to this in a bit more detail, is a real bright star for Vermont's economy in a growing area. We've been given the opportunity to invest nearly $10 million in one-time funds in community-based outdoor recreation projects over the last several years, and are thrilled to see those having an impact on the ground, particularly in some of our more rural areas of the state. And then the final thing I would point to is just the ongoing effort this agency is engaged in around addressing PCB contamination in Vermont schools and PFAS contamination in Vermont's drinking water supplies. So it is a big and diverse book of work that we are tasked here with at ANR. And as we roll through the presentations, just encourage you to either jot down questions if you have them, drop them into the chat, and we will continue to monitor that. And at the end of the presentation, we'll be happy to take up whatever questions you might have. And I've got a couple more slides about budget before I think I pass the talking stick over to Commissioner Fitzko. The first is just to give you a sense of our current year budget. All in, ANR's fiscal year 25 budget is just shy of $300 million. Of that total, about 2/3 sits in the Department of Environmental Conservation. And that's largely a reflection of the pass-through grants and contracts related to drinking water and wastewater infrastructure that we have benefited from, and DEC's critical role in getting those out to Vermont communities. Almost 90% of all the funding the agency sees at this point is from special and federal funds. Special funds are things like gate receipts collected at parks, the sale of hunting and fishing licenses, and permit fees for permits issued by the Department of Environmental Conservation. Nearly 2/3 of our budget, so nearly $200 million, we anticipate will pass through to municipalities, contractors, and partner organizations, with the balance stayed here to support our own internal operations. And just flagging that we've seen nearly $100 million increase in federal funds over the two preceding fiscal years, again, as a result of ARPA and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So at this point, this is how the agency's funding looks by the sort of flavor of money. This shows we're about half of federal funds. We're about 20% general funds, and then we've got this myriad of other types of funds, special funds that fund our operations. And with that, I am pleased to turn it over to Danny Fitzko to talk about the Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. And Danny, I'm happy to keep driving if you'd like, or stop sharing so you can take over control of the screen.
I'm happy for you to keep driving, so we
Okay.
don't have to keep changing each time. Good evening, everybody. As Secretary Morse said, I'm Danielle Fitzko. I'm the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. You'll probably hear me called Danny, so I respond to that really well. I'm going to give you an overview of FPR and who we are. And we're pretty fortunate that our name spells out pretty clearly what we do. We are forest, which we provide the foundation for keeping our forests healthy, resilient, intact, and sustainably managed. If you think about the top of Mount Mansfield all the way to the trees that grace Church Street in Burlington, we have a program that looks at all trees in Vermont. We are Vermont State Parks. This year, we welcomed over 1 million visitors during the operating season. And if you would account all those people that enjoy our state parks outside the operating season, that number would be staggering. We're also outdoor recreation, and we support the increasing popularity, diversification, and inclusion of outdoor recreation opportunities across Vermont. You can change it, Julie. This is our core management team. I want to introduce the name Kate Eberly. She is our principal assistant, and she's going to be the one mainly at the State House doing legislative affairs. I'm sure you'll be meeting with her, or you'll see her in the hallways or the cafeteria. We have three main division programs. We have the Division of Forests, which is led by Oliver Pearson. We have State Parks, which is led by Nate McKean. And we have Lands Administration and Recreation, which is led by Becca Washburn. And we have our business office, which is led by Ansley Bloomer. We have about 130 year-round staff, and then during the summertime, when we open our state parks, we bring on about 450 seasonals. And we bring in people from all over the country, and we like to think of it that it's a great opportunity to bring people to Vermont, try it out, and many times they come back every year or they stay in Vermont. Okay, Julie. I'm going to give you a flavor of our three main programmatic divisions. In the Division of Forest, we like to say Vermont is forest strong. We are 76% forested in the state, which provides, as you know, this incredible backdrop to the state. I can go on for days about why forests matter. I used to be in the division for about 20 years. But our whole service and division is about keeping Vermont's forest strong for all the benefits they provide to Vermont and Vermonters, big and small. It's a large team that works really hard, but I often think because they spend so much time in the woods, their work may not be as visible as some other program areas. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the programs within that division to give you a flavor of the work that we're doing. I'm going to start off with forest protection. And I start off here because at the core of the forestry division, we say healthy forests first. That is the core of what we try to do. We monitor the health of our forest. We even get up in a plane every year and monitor the health so we can be prepared and respond to any threats that we see coming to our forests. We've also had a hot fall wildfire season, and that we have a wildland fire team that also sits in forest protection. We do a lot to think about how do we prevent forest fires because most of them in Vermont are human caused. And then we look at how we respond to forest fires. This year in particular, while we didn't have more fires and more acres burned, it's definitely the risk is getting higher, and we're looking at ways so we can be better prepared to respond in the future. We also have a private lands program in the division with 80% of Vermont's forest owned by private landowners. This team is on the front line of working with private landowners. A significant part of their work is administering the use value appraisal program or the current use program, which has over 2 million acres and 16,000 parcels enrolled. It takes up a big portion of the work, but it's really important work. And that is why I think we are forest strong here in Vermont because of that program. We also have a state lands program in Division of Forest. They oversee the planning for over 360,000 acres that A&R manages for Vermont. And they have the direct oversight of about 190,000 acres. And that is a really hard job and complex job to balance all the different users and uses of public land, and just trying to also hit, Vermont's values and what the land needs. And it's quite complex. We also have an urban and community forestry program. This is the downtown program. It's looking at how do we green the gray in our built environment and maximize the power of trees downtown. We have a forest economy program that supports the forest product sector from the woods to the end user. Think of foresters, loggers, truckers, sawmills, secondary manufacturers like furniture makers. It's estimated that a forest product sector brings in over $2 billion a year and supports over 13,000 jobs. This year, actually in January, we released what is called the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap. The development of this really a 10-year action plan to support the forest product sector was directed by the General Assembly to develop. So you'll hear us talking about the roadmap and ways that we can support the forest product sector into the future. Because if we think forward, renewable, climate smart products are key. We also have a watershed forestry program with the primary focus to help put all those water quality practices on the ground during forestry operations. So that's Team Forestry working to keep Vermont's forest strong. We have parks. We have, as Secretary Moore mentioned, 55 developed parks. And again, this year we welcomed over 1 million visitors. And that's with, as you know, we had 2 major floods in Vermont, and we had significant interruptions in several of our parks this year. It is no small feat to open and close really a business within state government every year. During a busy summer weekend, we are pretty much the largest municipality in the state. Our parks are a gateway to the natural world. We are the largest outdoor education organization in the state. We are the third largest owner of constructed square footage in state government with over $280 million in built infrastructure, over 2,000 campsites, and miles of waste water and potable water infrastructure. To keep our people going to our state parks and getting outside, it's really important that we continue to invest in the infrastructure. While we do that, we do provide a lot of contracts out for trade jobs all across Vermont in very rural areas. The parks are conserved land and offer a range of conservation values like shoreline protection and bring in over $1 million in economic benefit to many communities in rural areas. So that's our state parks, which we think is like a crown jewel in Vermont. Our last programmatic division is our lands administration and recreation, and they have several buckets of work. One is lands administration. The agency with Fish and Wildlife, Department of Environmental Conservation, all have lands that they manage to meet their mission. And our team at FPR oversees the land administration. So think of all the leases and license and deeds, all the land records. We manage those for the 360,000 acres that A&R manages. We also have a lands conservation team that either looks at conserving land that the state will take over management of, or in easements where it's held by private landowners, and we help steward the easements going forward. And then the last bucket in this team is outdoor recreation. As Secretary Moore mentioned, Vermont is known for their outdoor recreation. It's really world class. We are actually for GDP, the second state in the nation for economic activity for outdoor recreation. A primary focus for us is working with all those partners that help maintain and steward those trails with a strong environmental ethic. Most of our trails are on private lands, and it takes a whole host of partners to get trails started and maintained. We also lead the Vermont Outdoor Recreation Economic Collaborative, or you'll hear it called VOREC. This was initiated by Governor Scott in 2017 through executive order, and it's all about how do we invest and improve the economic impact of outdoor recreation in Vermont. And we make a lot of grants out to community. As Secretary Moore said, each year between $3 and $8 million in state and federal funds, we grant out to communities and partners to enhance our outdoor recreation. We do have a business office. I just want to mention it because they're small, but they're mighty. You can't imagine the amount of things you have to buy to operate a state parks. Think about just even the amount of toilet paper we have to buy. It's quite a lot. And we process over 11,000 invoices a year, $8 million in deposits coming in from state parks. And then we have to return each year about $1 million in refunds. Just a lot moving in a very small business office. So that's our overview of our programs. And then our budget. If you look at our budget, we are about 25% general funds, 30% federal funds, 40% in park special funds. So that's the money we take in for park admissions and selling firewood, and 3% of special funds. Most of it's going to personnel services. That's the people who provide the service to Vermont. Operating is about 34%, and then we grant out funds each year. Okay, Julie. And when I think about FPR and A&R as a whole, it's so relevant to what we know about Vermont. We support the rural economy, both forest and recreation economies that combined bring in over $6.5 billion. We provide public access and outdoor equity, health and wellness, conservation of biodiversity, climate resilience, and mitigation. And these are just some of the headlines where you'll see our work pop up. We just conserved recently an island in Brighton. It's part of an island pond, actually. It's part of Brighton State Park now. You'll see in the bottom left our response to the wildland fires this year. We had 17 staff out on just one fire that was quite large. There was a lot of headlines about the Worcester Range long-range management plan, where we're looking at planning for state lands. Talked about the forest strategic roadmap, where we're really looking at the economy for forest product sector, recognizing our state parks were hit by floods and how it looked for us to respond. And then a little snippet about the town of Waterbury receiving one of our outdoor recreation grants. So that is FPR, and I look forward to working with you over the next couple of years.
So with that, we can turn it over to Jason and Heather and the team from DEC.
Thank you, Secretary Moore. Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to see you virtually here. I wanted to restate that I'm joined by Deputy Commissioner Heather Pembroke and by Director of our Water Investment Division, Neil Kamen. You'll see some fairly large numbers of money coming up in the subsequent slides, and Neil is responsible through his division of receiving and transferring that money out to businesses and municipalities in Vermont where they can be used for water investment projects. This was a very big eye opener for me coming into state government where all this stuff was funded, and undoubtedly it will be for some of you too. I came from Fish and Wildlife, where I had a wonderful career with the Warden Service. So if I've crossed your path previously, please make that known to me, whether it's on the call later or in the State House when we get to meet. So DEC is the Department of Environmental Conservation, and our mission, which you can see, is to preserve, enhance, restore, and conserve Vermont's natural resources and protect human health for the benefit of this and future generations. We are a very big operation. We're about 354 permanent full-time employees, and then we grow not quite as large as Forest and Parks in the seasonal times. But we do add to those numbers. So if you look at our staff, we're comprising upwards of 2/3 of the agency at times, and so we have a fairly big price tag that goes along with us, which you'll see. We are a regulatory agency, issue a lot of permits, but we go a lot further than that, beyond regulation and compliance, and we do a lot of management, water quality, air quality, regulating solid and hazardous wastes, and administering many voluntary pollution prevention and waste reduction programs. Think composting and beyond. We have a tremendous amount of programs, and the link there in the previous slide there. Thank you for advancing that, Julie. But you'll have access to this, and you can go on our website and see many of the projects that we work on that you may not have previously associated with DEC. Thanks, Julie. We can head on. So this is our organizational chart. You can see me there in blue, and my assistant, not on the screen, is John McKelvey. He handles a lot of our legislative contacts, so you'll get to know John. And Deputy Commissioner Pembroke is here with me today. If you read across the board there, I'll get into some further detail on the next slide, but we have 8 divisions. So administration and innovation, air quality and climate, drinking water and groundwater protection, environmental compliance, waste management and prevention, water investment, which is Neil here on the screen with us, watershed management, and geology. And I think on this next screen, I can get into a little bit more detail with those. So there's some employees assigned to some employee numbers assigned to these divisions, just to give you a snapshot of how much time and effort is invested into some of these divisions. So if you look at administration and innovation, that division essentially has to exist in a department as big as ours, as sort of the glue that holds us all together. Administrative support, human resources, financial management. Essentially, they're the custodians of the admin side of our operation, and they do a wonderful job. They're led by Kim McKee. Air quality and climate. They're a very small division, but they fight way above their weight class for around 20 people. They do a lot of monitoring. They monitor air quality in Burlington, one of our, of course, our major municipality, and year to year can tell us about particulate matter and contaminants that we're all breathing. As you know, we're very lucky in this state, but we still do have concerns which we monitor. They're also involved with permitting and compliance, planning, and they do a lot of mobile source cars and trucks sort of pollution monitoring. Drinking water and groundwater protection. That division is basically dedicated to human health and the environment and for emerging contaminants. And they also work a lot with septic systems and how septic systems affect groundwater. The emerging contaminants that they are concerned about, mainly in our groundwater, is PFAS, which you'll certainly hear about, which is a polyfluoroalkyl substances that come from products leach into our groundwater, and that is a big focus of the Drinking Water and Groundwater Protection Division. They do a tremendous amount of education. They field a lot of calls, and they put a lot of folks in touch with help, and they put a lot of minds at rest when it comes to contaminants in drinking water. Environmental assistance is undoubtedly a division of ours that you've heard of. Those are our environmental enforcement officers, and they're also in charge of a program called Healthy Homes, which essentially helps Vermonters who've got failed septic systems or failed water systems on their property. We provide assistance and counseling and financial aid to folks that are otherwise looking at bills that they otherwise could not afford. We also, within my office, house the state geologist. They are a very small division, but they are bursting to life with all the flooding that we've had and showing the seriousness of landslides in Vermont. That they've become very, very busy responding to landslides around Vermont. There are days when they get 1, 2, and 3 calls about potential landslides at post-flood, and are getting very good at responding and providing assistance to many big questions that relate all the way up to buying out properties, which I'm sure you've all heard about. Our waste management and prevention division, think solid waste, think landfills, oil spills. They do a tremendous amount of work around the state that affects everything from junkyards to litter to catalytic converter theft. I'm just learning about today, actually, which was something I did not know about. And you'll learn that I'm still learning a lot about this job, but a fascinating division when you drill into it. I got to visit a solid waste facility just this. Well, I guess it's 6 months ago now. Seems like it was yesterday. Where if you throw away something on hazardous waste pickup day, you can see in our website some of the slides that are provided. You can't imagine the things that people throw away and that they want to throw away responsibly, and that division is responsible in managing that. Neil, I don't want to pretend to run over your explanation of your division here. So if I miss anything that you find relevant, please let me know. But Neil's division essentially they coordinate the investment of state and federal funding. We receive large amounts of money for clean water and drinking water infrastructure, and we pass it along to municipalities to make our water infrastructure sound and safe and clean. And since you're here, Neil, I'm happy to have you throw in your 2 cents if you like, but no need if you're happy with my description.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
Happy to take any questions later. Yeah.
Thank you. The Watershed Management Division, they deal with our surface water. They deal with wetlands. They are responsible for the healthy ecosystems that live on the surface of our state of Vermont. And we have tremendous amount of rivers and streams, 23,000 miles of rivers and streams. We have 800 lakes and ponds and 300,000 acres of wetlands here in this state. They are also dealing with wake boats, which undoubtedly some of you have heard about. They're responsible for shoreline protection and all the fun that goes along with lakes and ponds management. I think that can take us to the next slide, Julie. This will thank you. This goes through some of our budgetary explanation. We are largely, as I mentioned, federal funds. So I think we're around $208 million for our total budget for fiscal year 2025. So 61% federal funds. We do have special funds. We have permit funds. We get a lot of money from permitting. We have other special funds, and we do take general fund money as well. And there's also that small IDT fund. And in our costs, which you can see are reflected in grants, and largely personal services, right? We have 353 or 354 employees, and it's expensive to pay them. The last piece of the pie there is operating, which you think paper clips and trucks and gas and sticky notes and things like that. It's an expensive operation to run. And over the last several years, and I know that Neil or Heather could tell you the exact year, but we've grown exponentially just because of this federal funding that's coming to Vermont. Next one, please, Julie. So I wanted to share with you some areas of focus which you might see and you might already be well aware of or have something in the works on. The PFAS and PCBs, so those are our emerging contaminants, right? They are environmental toxins that affect human health. We find them in drinking water, specifically PFAS, and PCBs you've probably heard about that are affecting schools, and schools fall within our purview when the environmental contaminants are present, right? So we are helping schools manage, mitigate, and remediate some of these contaminants when we find them above certain levels in those establishments. We're always now thinking about flood resilience and responding to Act 121, which we'll certainly talk about again in the State House this year. ARPA and bill projects, so we're looking at so that's American Rescue Plan Act and bipartisan infrastructure law projects. So that's where this money comes from. All these hundreds of millions of dollars we're responsible for. And you know, they're a large economic driver. You will undoubtedly see and hear about ways we can all look to spend this money responsibly. And then we have CAFO in there, which is stands for Concentrated Animal Feeding Operation, which is farms, right? So we bring a lot of animals together. We produce a lot of nutrients in the way of manure and other things that go into our water systems, and that is a charge of the DEC and our staff. And so maybe in the news in the past couple of days you've seen something about that, and we're happy to take questions on it. But that will certainly be something you will see in the State House this coming year. And not sure if we have another slide, but I think we probably do. Okay, no, we don't. So we'll certainly be here, and we have a wealth of knowledge in Heather and Neil and a little bit in me. If we can answer questions for you later on in the call, we're happy to do it. And I'm truly excited to meet all of you that I have not met and make your acquaintance. And if we can do that sooner than later, my email will be at the end of the slide and probably my phone number. So reach out, and I would love to chat and have coffee and talk about some of your priorities. So thank you.
Thanks, Jason. And our final presentation will come from Andrea Shortsleeve. As some of you may have seen in the news, Andrea stepped into the role of interim commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife just at the end of last week. So she's also very much our newest commissioner, and I'm thrilled to have her be part of the leadership team here at ANR. Take it away, Andrea.
Yeah, thank you, Julie, and thank you all for your grace as I'm learning how to do this role. Prior to last week, I've spent 8 years in the department working as a wildlife biologist focusing on habitat. So new to the role, but not new to the department. And the mission of our department is the conservation of all fish, wildlife, and plants and their habitats for the people of Vermont. And what that means is that we work on things from muskies to moose, from bobcats down to butterflies and everything in between. We work on natural communities, threatened and endangered species, game species, and everything in the mix. And our work takes us to serving, not just hunters and anglers and trappers, but also to all of the wildlife viewers. We have a community wildlife program that brings us into municipalities and communities across the state, as well as a lot of work focused on private landowners as well as the Ennis program. We try to use the best science we have to create some really great conservation and outreach efforts, and do a lot of work. So our team, we have a small but mighty department here. We have 130 roughly full-time employees, and as Julie said, I'm sitting here as the interim commissioner starting last week. Hannah Smith is our general counsel, and I believe she's on the call, and you will definitely see her down at the State House this year. We also have a principal assistant, Abigail Connolly, who's been amazing in helping me learn this role so far. And then we have 5 different divisions within our department: the Fish Division, Wildlife, the Warden Service, Outreach Division, and then a financial business office as well. And so just to run through what our divisions do: Fish Division works with fish. They're responsible for the habitat and the science behind planning all of managing all of our fish species and their habitat. It also includes our fish hatcheries and our access areas. Our Wildlife Division is responsible for the conservation of all of the other things. So all of the wildlife, plants, and the habitats across the state. Our Warden Service, of course, enforces not just our fish and wildlife laws, but also boating, snowmobiling, ATV, general criminal laws. And most recently, they're involved in quite a number of the animal cruelty cases across the state, helping out our sister law enforcement agencies who are also finding that their staffing is not being met and their caseload is much higher. So our Warden Service is doing quite a bit of work that's not just focused on conservation law right now. And then our Outreach Department, or Division, excuse me, does a tremendous job. They do all of the public information, all of the outreach, social media. They run hunter education programs and the Green Mountain conservation camps at the Kehoe and I'm totally blanking, Kehoe and Buck Lake conservation camps during the summer. Yeah, I guess our next slide would be great. And then our budget, I'm still learning the ins and outs of this. And one thing to know is that a lot of the funding sources that we have traditionally dealt with in fish and wildlife comes from being able to pull down federal funds from the Pittman-Robertson and the Dingell-Johnson Acts that tax, of course, license sales and ammunition and fishing lures and things like that. We also are receiving about $8.3 million from the general fund. And then we have several interdepartment transfers. Most notably, we have some EPA funds coming from DEC, about $1.1 million, and then public safety. In the past year, we've had about a $300,000 increase to support the animal cruelty investigations that our wardens are doing. And so I guess that's a really brief introduction to our overview of fish and wildlife. And glad to leave some time for questions here.
Thank you, Andrea, Jason, and Danny. I do see we've got a couple of questions in the chat, and we can start there, and then happy to take some hands. I see, Danny, you've typed up a response to the question Rep. North asked around sustainably managed and healthy forests. Would you like to take a moment and just speak to the high points there?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for the question. Act 59 is about land conservation. And when we're thinking about those lands that are currently conserved and what will be conserved in the future. They're sort of broken out into 3 different buckets. One of those buckets is called a defined natural resource management, and that natural resource management definition is meant to include working forests. So in the current inventory that was just completed this summer, the natural resource management category, which includes forest management, is the largest. And I expect going forward with new land conservation, it will be continue to be the largest that will look to conserve. Act 59 is guided by Vermont Conservation Design, which is scientifically based sort of plan for how to achieve an ecologically functioning landscape. And Vermont Conservation Design is about working forests. So we feel that Act 59 supports forest management going forward. The other 2 categories are more passive management. If you look at Vermont Conservation Design, the recommendation is about 9% of Vermont's landscape would be considered like old growth, while also 5 to 6% would be young forest, which would really need management. So we're looking at sort of these 2 targets, but the majority would be looked at as natural resource management, which would maintain working forests. That was long-winded. Any follow-up on that?
Great, thank you. I also see that Representative Bishop has placed a question in the chat. This one's for you, Andrea, regarding the Wildlife Division and questions about the management of invasive species. And if you want to touch on that, and maybe Danny would like to weigh in here too, along with Jason, as this is certainly a cross-cutting issue.
Sure. We do a lot of work with invasive species in the context of improving habitat. And so, but in terms of invasive species in the lakes and streams, I know DEC does quite a bit of work on that. On our wildlife management areas and our streamside parcels, our biologists do a lot of work in the riparian areas, addressing invasive plants there.
And I'm happy to speak for FPR. We mainly focus on terrestrial invasive plants, so this goes to DEC as well. But if you're looking for information, we do support vtinvasive.org, which is a clearinghouse of information about both terrestrial and aquatic plants, invasive plants.
And Jason, do you want to talk a little bit about the invasive aquatic plant work in your department?
Sure, thanks. And Heather, feel free to speak about this too, if you like. We certainly do a tremendous amount of monitoring, both streams and Lake Champlain, where we do everything from monitoring all the way up through harvest of, well, we support the harvest of water chestnut, milfoil. That all falls to us, and we certainly benefit from Army Corps of Engineers help there. But that's a big part of our watershed management division's charge in the summertime. We have a fleet of boats, and we're out there frequently. Happy to put you in touch with those folks, Representative Bishop, if you wish, and refer you to the website also to show you some of the more granular work that gets done.
Thanks. There's a question about whether flooding has caused ANR to rethink logging practices. Danny, would you like to jump in there?
Yeah, sorry, I had to find my mute button. We're always thinking about, when we're doing forest management, the impacts it has on the broad landscape. We have in Vermont what we call the acceptable management practices to maintain water quality on logging jobs. And so that is best practices really that loggers and contractors will put on the ground to make sure that we're maintaining water quality. If we're looking at the best thing we can do for flooding going forward is to keep forests forested. And that we're 76% forested now. We just don't want those forests to be converted to development or pavement. That's where you're going to see the biggest increase in flooding, is when we take forests out of forests. So management's not having the impact. Actually, management has, we're getting green, sustainable products from our forests, and it's also helping landowners keep their forests forested. So overall, we certainly the practices that we have here in Vermont aren't large scale clear cuts. We really practice sustainable ecological forestry in Vermont, which looks at trying to increase complexity and diversity and resilience and health going forward.
Danny. Are there other questions folks would like to ask? You're welcome to just come off mute and ask away, or there's also a raise hand function in the top bar. And if you push that button, I'll be able to see who's raised their hand. I'm not seeing any further questions, but really want to thank you for making time to come learn a little bit more about ANR this evening. Look forward to getting to meet many of you in person over the weeks ahead down at the State House. And as I said at the outset, please don't hesitate to reach out with questions or comments. I think Emma will follow up and circulate the slides we used tonight, along with a link to the recording if you want to further review what was presented, and look forward to meeting you. Thank you very much for your time. Have a good evening.